All right.
Okay.
So we are here with the Fit for Tomorrow podcast. My name's Cara Barton, and I'm joined with Philip Weigel from CrossFit CLE and Nate Shoemaker from the Case Western Rowing, as well as the Cleveland Rowing Foundation.
Yep. Excited to be here.
So first, give us a little bit of a background and kind of what gets you involved with the Cleveland Rowing.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of background athletically, I didn't actually start in the rowing world. So I grew up as mostly running. I was track and cross country, did a little bit of swimming when I was like really young, tried it in high school, decided that those people are crazier than anyone else. And so I stopped swimming. So basically I was a runner, played a little bit of rugby even and whatever. In high school, came to college, stumbled across the rowing team from a friend of a friend who was like, hey, you're tall, you might like this. Sure. And so I joined up like the spring to the end of the fall semester my freshman year, joined in the winter training. So on the rowing machines and everything at the school, at Ohio University, and kind of never looked back from there. And so that's oddly enough how a lot of people get involved in this in the first place. There's some crazy stat to where like 60% of people who row in college have never rowed before in their life. So it's very different than like I played Pee Wee soccer or football or whatever, and this is who I am as a person now.
Yeah.
You'd find it typically later on in life.
I can't think of very many high schools that have a rowing program.
Yeah, Cleveland is a weird one where we have more than most.
Yeah,
but
because of the foundation around it.
Right. Yeah, because the Cuyahoga River and plus so many prep schools are around here. Yeah. It's a very common thing at your prep schools.
Yeah.
The only public school in Cleveland that has one is Shoemaker.
Okay.
And they're a rarity. Most programs are like city-based. So like Cincinnati has Cincinnati Juniors along with a couple other. Columbus has a couple club programs with very, very few actual school programs, especially comparatively. So where I grew up down in Canton, they didn't really think that this was a sport outside of like what you saw in the Olympics sometimes.
Everybody plays football.
Football, so. Yeah, it is. If you don't play football, you are at the football game at the very least. That's 100% true. All my uncles and stuff were all football players. One actually went on to play at Mount and everything. So yeah, so that is definitely king. And so rode all through college. I studied exercise science and nutrition, and I knew I wanted to get into coaching. Originally, I was going to go strength training, stumbled my way into coaching for a small masters team in Akron at Portage Lakes. And so that was a lot of fun. It was my first kind of step into coaching and getting paid for it, because I did a little bit with my
That's the hard part.
Right, yeah, which is hard. Yeah, the hard part to find anything out. And so because I started doing it a little bit in college, I was just like coaching our club team, because we were mostly an uncoached program. So I was like pulling on the skill sets from other people who came from these high school clubs, like in Pittsburgh and stuff like that. And so, all that led to, I ended up reaching out to the Cleveland Foundry a year after I graduated, after I was like trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. And I was like, hey, you guys look like you're doing some cool stuff, and I would love to be a part of that. And so I reached out to them, got hired up there, ended up starting the Laurel team from over on the east side, Laurel School. And I worked at the Foundry for a little while, and kind of one thing led to another, coached them, ended up moving on from the Foundry, got a new career, ended up moving Laurel from the Foundry over to Cleveland Rowing Foundation, and then got reached out to by Case Western, and now I'm there.
Laurel's a high school team?
Laurel's a high school team, yeah. They're a small private school on the east side, kind of a Shaker area.
Oh, okay.
The graduating class of like 60, so like teeny tiny school.
How do you go about forming a high school team with that small of a school?
It's hard. It's not easy. So
you just look at all the kids, you're like, all right, this all tall kids that don't play basketball.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And so a lot of times rowing ends up being one of those sports that people who didn't quite find their home in other sports, or they got burnt out, which is where a lot of college kids come from. I have a good friend from high school. She was a multi-time state swimmer now, and then was completely burnt out, went to Ohio State, now has like 3 Big Ten titles for rowing.
Wow.
Never touched an oar day in her life. and
came in real fit,
yeah, she's just a freak athlete,
turned
and
it
so
over to a different discipline.
yeah, you could have put her in as a gymnast, and she probably still would have won championships. Like
Yeah.
she's just that kind of person. But anyways, the with a school that small, you have to really be strategic about it. Of like, what are you going to focus on? Because one of the unique things with rowing is, again, one, most people don't come in with a background of this, and so you kind of have to take them from the ground up, which at times can be really beneficial. So you're not having to unteach any bad habits that they learned from when they were younger. They have nothing basically, which is good and bad all at the same time. The learning curve is insanely steep to begin with, but then you figure it out. And so what we focused on was our smaller boats, because rowing starts with, instead of just being like with football or soccer or any traditional sports, like you have this many players on the field and you do this, and this is how you play the game. There's, single boats, there's one person boats, 2 people boats, 4 people, 8 people. And so you can run the whole gambit. And, it kind of comes down to basic math of like, you need to have 3 of any really sort of boat class to form a fast one. So kind of think of it as like, you have to have, your first, second, and third string starters, or your starters and your second and your third string to really push to make that first string fast. Same thing with, we call it our, V1, V2, V3 kind of boats. To where like, just so if you focus on, if you have enough kids to fill 8-man boats up and get at least 3 of those, you can be fast.
Yeah.
But if not, you kind of have to downsize the boats. And so even with less people, you can still make fast boats because you just downsize the amount of people in it. And it's a very unique situation with that, where you can control the size of the team that you play, which is weird. So yeah.
Are your boats drafting off of each other?
No.
Okay.
No.
I guess
Well, that's not entirely true, I guess, but not in the same way you think about like with cycling.
Okay.
Like you can get in someone's draft, I guess, if you want to call it that. But realistically, that's actually less than ideal because it actually slows you down. Because if you ever been like speedboats or anything like that, like you've been on the water in a boat before, so it creates a wake. That's sort of like, so you can be in somebody's wake. But when you're in someone's wake, the water is disrupted and it is easier to get through, kind of, but it's circulating. So it's not like air where you're cutting through the air. The boats are designed to cut through the water already. What happens though is when you place those oars in the water, if the water's already disrupted, there's less to actually grab onto and actually push yourself along.
Oh, interesting. So you're dealing with the turbulence of the water, affecting how that oar pulls through it.
Exactly. So you're able to put down like less force on it, because if it's spinning just the same way, that like the reason
it's not as stable.
Yeah, it's not as stable for starters. You can get it sucked under because of that, but it's the same reason that there's like bubblers and diving pools to disrupt the surface tension, because it makes the water softer. It's the same concept of like, it feels visible or noticeably different getting into solid water and connecting and going, opposed to like almost getting in and pushing off like jello or like something soft kind of idea. Like you will notice a difference. And so that's where coxswains, the small people in the boat that steer and yell at everybody, that's where they come into play, of like taking the correct lines to make sure that you're getting clean water and you're getting the right actual racing lines and everything like that. But that's specifically in the fall racing, when you're actually going single file down the river or something like that. It's called head racing. It's more like time trial setup.
Okay.
So where opposed to what's in the spring, where it looks more like a giant track race on water, to where there's buoys lined up, everyone has their lane, and go.
And that's what you see at the Olympics.
That's what you see at the Olympics, yeah. But some of the most famous races, have you ever heard of the Head of Charles? In Boston?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is a head race. That is one of the obviously most famous head races, because it's been going on forever.
Yeah.
But every boat there, they literally will just like a time trial on a bike or running or whatever, it's just go 10 seconds, go 10 seconds, go.
Interesting. So that gets weird when you start catching somebody.
Yeah.
Because then you're fighting through that wash.
Exactly.
Trying to get around them into your new placement.
Yeah.
And oh wow.
Opposed to also, if you take so the Charles and the Cuyahoga are very similar in the fact that they kind of do, zigzag all the way. Crooked Cuyahoga Loadway meeting Crooked River, right?
Mhm.
And so you're also playing with the idea of, okay, am I going to take them on this turn where I have to go on the outside and I'm making up distance, and
Because you're not just straight line, you're on like a actual course.
you're on an actual course, like you're a
Oh,
race
wow.
car
That's pretty
driver.
cool.
Yeah, that's a lot more interesting.
So do you go into races, I guess, like looking at the different turns?
Yeah, so you go into the races, I said, that's where the coxswains come into play. And they are a huge part of crew boats. So when we say crew boats, somebody refers to that, that's the boats that have 4 or 8 people in them. And then they have a coxswain steering it. Opposed to, I call them blind boats, but they're small boats. It's when you have, 2 or 1 person, single person boat where there's no coxswain. So it's the actual person in the boat having to like look back behind them and look where they're going, because you face the direction you face away from the direction you're heading.
Yeah.
You're
And
going backwards.
Yeah, and so the only person, so it's kind of, I joke, and I feel like I could say this as a rower, is rowers don't have to be the smart ones in the boat. You're just big dumb meatballs that pull on a stick. I was like, don't think, just pull. Like, just go as fast as you can, go as hard as you can. Let the coxswain do the thinking.
It's my kind of sport. That's why I dislike CrossFit, because I actually have to pay attention and count reps.
How many reps was I doing? Yeah, I mean, especially during the sprints in the spring, like most people kind of like, not most people, but I know a lot of people just kind of like black out a bit during it. It's just like, oh, we're here. Okay. Just go. Yeah. And it's the coxswain's duty to kind of keep people engaged, keep them focused on what they're doing. Because it is a very technical sport that can go sideways very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So when you're doing crew, when you have 4 and 8 in a boat, it becomes very important that you sync up that stroke rate.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Now I would imagine, or at least in a single person vessel, right? You're piloting. If you don't have a rudder, then it's based on how hard do you push up this side.
Yep.
So if you're in a large boat, does the coxswain have the ability to fully steer that thing, or do you actually have to start applying different pressure on one side over the other to create a turn?
So yes, is the answer to that, I guess. Okay. So yeah,
sort of.
Yeah, kind of. And so in the single person boats called sculls, because that's actually the style of rowing. If you have 2 oars, it's called sculling. If you ever heard of somebody doing a sculler ab workout or a rower, that's same thing. That's more of what like the rowing machine mimics, or is that straight pool, opposed to what's called sweeping, which is when you have 1 oar per rower, opposed to 2 oars.
Because they're not using 2. So I'm on the left, she's on the right.
Yeah, you're on port or starboard. And so you're actually, that's what's kind of different of when you're coming up for a traditional rowing stroke. If you're in a sweep boat, you're actually reaching out and around. So it's actually creating that torsion on your body to you're up and pulling through. So it's not just a linear kind of push. So there's that rotational factor in there that for coaches, we have to watch out for, like over training one side or the other for athletes as well. But
some of the rowers I've seen in the clinic is for that exact issue, where doing that twisting motion that I never really considered.
Yeah, because it's like I did a strength test in college one time for the kids I was coaching. It was kind of part of the exercise science stuff we were doing. I was just doing like some experiments on them, and we actually tested grip strength on port versus starboard side rowers. And it was funny. There was a noticeable difference between like which one was their outside hand, inside hand.
Yeah, actually putting more leverage on that outer one.
Somewhat, but also the inside hand is actually the one that we call feathers. That's the one that actually rotates the oar. And so you're actually having to you're putting all your force out there. Yeah. Because that's what's a longer lever. But when you're talking about that much shorter distance, you're still having to crank with that side, but you're also having to rotate the oar back up
to get it out and into the water.
Out and into the water, but it actually rotates this way as well. Yeah. And so it's called feathering. So that's actually where a lot of the grip strength has to come from. Where on the outside, you're basically just holding it in like a C grip, and you're just pulling it in. And so when it comes to steering though, the coxswains actually they have a little rudder, it's about that big, underneath. Basically it's a boat that's the same length of a school bus and the 8s. And so it can work, but just like any boat, it only works when you're moving at speed. And so if you're moving slowly or not as fast, like it's not going to affect it as much. And so you're not going to turn as quickly.
What speed are we talking about here? What point does it start kicking in?
I would say, as far as knots or something goes, I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge with that. but like you have to be kind of everyone rowing all at the same time, like getting the boat are really kind of moving. I wouldn't be able to say like miles per hour, like 10 miles an hour, I don't know, something like that, or knots, whatever that would translate into. And it depends on the shell and everything as well too, where, so you do have to implement the rowers, and they'll kind of call them to action with that, just like a mushing team, right? So it's like, okay, ports harder, starboard's lighter, will pull you or push you in certain directions, especially in rivers like Charles or Cuyahoga, to where the turns are not just like these big, gorgeous sweeping turns. It's like, and go, kind of thing. And so it becomes super, super important
to have that communication.
And to, again, keep your rowers engaged so they are listening to you, kind of deal. And so.
Now, with cycling, depending on the type of race, sometimes roads are shut down, sometimes they're not shut down. Are the rivers shut down?
Yeah,
for boats?
For the most part. So fun fact about Cleveland specifically is the Cuyahoga is a commercial waterway for the freighters going up and down the steel mill and everything else like that. So we actually had to get like a act of Congress to get this to actually happen every year for the Cuyahoga, which is a huge race that we have here in the city. And so for the race day, we actually shut down shipping from like 5 a.m. until 5 p.m. And it is an ordeal.
I believe that.
Yeah, because especially in the middle of summer, boats, freighters are going up and down all day, every day. And that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of material that we just have to go.
Hold on, we gotta do some rowing.
We got to do a thing first today. And so, we were very cognizant of that, and we made sure that like we are respecting that. So we are out of the way, because it's crazy of like coming around that like 3 o'clock time. We've had it before to where like a freighter is sitting there like, let's go guys, like pull the buoys, we're gone. I mean, I remember one time we didn't quite get some buoys out, and they just like did little plastic buoys. It's a massive freighter the size of skyscraper. They don't care. Like, and I don't blame them.
Notice.
Yeah, whatever. As long as you didn't hit someone, we're good. But no, for the races, the rivers get shut down. So like the Charles, obviously not a commercial waterway, so like doesn't really matter. But the Cuyahoga, it's kind of crazy. It's but during practice times and stuff, we're right there alongside them.
Well, that's like I had a patient one time telling me how she went to the store and got a bunch of new neon gear to wear on the winter. That is something I never considered. She's like, I want the other boats to be able to see me. Rowing's a lot more dangerous for the sport than I ever anticipated.
Specifically here in Cleveland, it gets a little sketchy, but like it's not dangerous to where like we shouldn't be doing it. And that's one of the things that like as a coach, we go through a lot of training. We go through a lot of hours of shadowing. We have to work our way up through the process, and these are like internal foundation rules and everything of like you have to be a trainee first, which means you can only take out one shell at a time, like one boat worth of people, that's it. And then you work your way up to where you can take 2 out, and then 3 out, and then whatever. And depending on the time of year, if it's this time of year, let's say we randomly got a warm day, theoretically we could go out. We are in what's called cold water rules, to where everything gets brought down. So if you normally would be able to take out 3 boats, now you can only take out 2. The only thing is with that doesn't go down as a trainee, you can still take out 1, because you can't just say, you can't take out any.
One is none.
One or none. And so we are very well trained with, and very well we take it very seriously of the safety on the water with it, especially when it comes to working with the kids. The adults too, but like we all like to say that like you're only as safe as your crew is trained, especially the coxswains. Them understanding you're communicating with them from a different boat onto the water of like, okay, this giant freighter is going by, and it's not nearly as scary as it looks like. It's freaky the first time it happens, because of course, and you're down here, it's like,
I could be a buoy.
I could be dead. And especially if you're like, you hear them on the turns, because have you ever seen the freighters go down the river? Yeah, so when they go around turns, they have bow thrusters, and it's just picks it up. You can like feel that in the shells, and like you feel the bubbling, and you feel the pressure, and you kind of feel the boat drifting towards the hole that the freighter is moving. And so we have like, we train our crews, the coaches all know what to do. And it's one of those like, okay, this is happening, don't talk, I need to be able to communicate with you now,
Yeah.
kind of deal. And obviously in smaller boats, it's a little more sketchy than it is in bigger boats, just because of size.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so it's a little dangerous, but it's also, we take the care to make it
Who
safe.
regulates the training to
So that's a good
each level
question.
of coaching?
So depending on the boathouse, because there's only two at the moment, soon to be three, with Case Western opening up our own up here near the steel mills here, hopefully at the end of the summer. Knock on wood, money comes through. But the foundry has their own safety manual. Cleveland Rowing Foundation has their own safety manual. They're pretty much so the same, with like slight differences, where they might come down lower on this, that, the other thing, or slight verbiage here. Because the foundry is all youth there, and we have adults, so they have the ability to go out on their own without coaches and stuff like that. So we have to like compensate for that as well,
Yeah.
where they don't have that issue, because the kids are never allowed to go out by themselves until they're 18. So the only people they have going out there by themselves are other coaches.
Yeah.
But still, so they cover their bases there. But like, we internally run things, so it's not law, but if you want to function out of our facilities, you will follow this or you will be gone. And that's happened more than once. It's not frequent, but like, we come down on people hard if they put people at risk, especially if it's putting other people at risk. It's like, it's almost one thing to where, okay, you're out on your own boat and you did something stupid, but if you're out there with 3/8 worth of adults, kids, college kids, whatever it might be, like, you need to take that seriously.
Yeah. Well, the boathouse has a lot of adults.
We have a ton of adults, yeah. WRA is the exclusive adult rowing program in the city, outside of Case Western, which college kids, adults technically. But yeah, they're the exclusive one there. When summer rowing league comes around, 500-600 people come through that at minimum.
It's crazy.
And then you have like,
It's awesome.
yeah, it's huge, it's great. It's really the best way to get involved if you ever want to try to be on the water. 15 times a summer, just once a week. We have little races halfway through and then at the very end. And you get to go in with as a novice with everybody else as a novice. And so everybody gets to splash around and be chaotic all together.
And it's a lot, like you said, it's a lot of new people who didn't really have a past in rowing that are just getting into it.
Yeah, and it's some of the most, as a coach, I joke that it is the hardest thing in the world to coach. Like, you guys work with adults. Adults that have not done a sport, so like fresh out of college, oh, I was a basketball player or whatever, teaching them a new skill, done. But it's a lot of the people that we're getting there, which I think is awesome, are they're 40, 50 something years old. The last time they did something athletic was more than likely high school, so 30 years ago at minimum sometimes. And so it's like, if you think about it from that perspective, you're like, why can't you understand what I'm trying to teach you?
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, because they haven't learned a new motor skill in 30 years. Of course they can. Like, it'd be hard for you to learn a new motor skill right now if you haven't done anything either. And so it's a crazy concept, because we take what we do on the ergs and we go basically 5 minutes. Okay, you get the basic pattern, arms, body, legs, and drive. Okay, cool, we're good. Now we're gonna make things super complicated, sort of. But the thing I always tell people is, like, first day is gonna be complete information overload. Come back tomorrow or next week, you will remember, what's the general rule, 60% of what you learned, right? And it'll be significantly easier. You will pick up more and more of it each time, but that initial time is just like, what is happening? You're using your words that I don't know. There's so many things happening at the same time. Like, what's going on? And so we have to be really cognizant of that, so we don't like scare people off from the sport. One of our missions this year as CRF is kind of just overarchingly lower the standard, lower the bar. How do I say this? Lower the bar and barrier to getting into rowing, just across the board. That's like, if it's socioeconomic or if it's actual ability level. We're starting to start investing in para stuff this year, and everything with our vets program. And so we're doing everything we can to make it accessible for as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good time.
Because a lot of the people that I interact with on that that do rowing, they're coming in rowing once a week and then doing CrossFit, 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
As a cross training, and really, because they get that social interaction from both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was definitely one of those, man. That's when I.
That's where I met you.
Yeah, so I met you. Through Peter Bonsky bullied me into it. But yeah, so yeah, that's a huge aspect of it. And I love the idea of adult sport in general. I mean, some people it's pickleball, some people it's whatever, but like some people do this. And amongst other things, I mean, I have a friend who was in a bocce league at I think it's over on the east side somewhere. But like, I was like, all right, like, it sounds like a great time. But I was like, guys, sign me up.
I'm playing the wrong sports.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, the social aspect of it's huge. Not to mention the fact of like, you just get to be around people, which I think fills, especially as we've learned the last few years, right? People need that. And
more and more people are working from home and going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I my new job that I have, I'm working from home because I am a territory rep, but like I see clients and things, but I don't like have that office camaraderie. So it's huge for me personally of like being involved in something. And you get the added benefit and the added like camaraderie of like you have your team that even if you're not in the boat chit-chatting with each other, you're in it together, you're doing the thing, and then you go grab a beer afterwards. That's what SRL is at the end of the day. It's beer-led rowing, which is fantastic. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned. But
so when you're training, like going from the high school kids to the adult league, what does that programming look like in terms of the exercises?
So when you go to adult league, there's 2 separate things you can look at when you say adult league. So you have masters, which is the actual like competitive. I mean, it's all masters, but we call it sweeps or competitive masters, where they'll actually go and we'll go and race and we'll go to competitions, and that's where somebody like you, even your Olympic level people are kind of at. Is they're past college, they're still doing this competitively. They take it very seriously, and that reflects very similarly to the college level, opposed to like your rec league stuff, which is more just like, we're going to learn the basics. We're going to go paddle around. We might do some pieces that are a little bit more intense just for the sake of doing it. But I would say the biggest difference for me, because I've coached high school, I've coached some middle school programs, like just intro stuff. I've coached masters in college, so I've been the whole gambit of it. The biggest difference to me is teaching freshmen and novice high schoolers versus teaching freshman and novice college kids and stuff. And like I joke about especially when I was coaching a short stint helping out with St. Ed's, the high school boys who are going to grow 9 inches over the next 3 years, they don't know where their fingertips are at. And so they're just a gangly whatever in the first place. So like the technique, the focus on them is not developing power and developing strength and developing cardio endurance. It's teaching them to be coordinated and to teaching them how to be very body aware, which is a unique thing that people don't think about when they get into rowing. Because you get onto the erg and you're just wailing on it. But there's the body awareness, there's the, when they're first learning, it's all about learning just the proper sequencing of how to get the proper stroke and how to work together with your teammates, all do it the same. One of my sayings is there's a lot of ways to row right, there's a lot of ways to row wrong, but rowing differently than the person in front of you and behind you is the number one way to row wrong. Because if you're all rowing the same, that's better than any super masterful technique that somebody might have. And so it's learning to like, this is how we row in this program. This is how we will mesh up with the people, if it's timing or how we're applying pressure or how we're even carrying our oar up the slide and everything. It's all about that like initial immersion into what does it mean to do rowing, and less of the, by the time they get to become seniors, in high school, that's when we're working on being explosive. That's when we're working on, the finer tuning and just like putting down as much pressure as you can onto it, because the rest of the fine details are worked out. And then when I say with college kids, especially ones that maybe like came from somewhat of an athletic background, that learning curve is a lot faster. And then you get to jump into the power and the application and the crew synchronization a lot sooner. But yeah, with high schoolers, I would say freshman, sophomore, and even some of your junior year, technique is everything. It makes it a little different than a lot of sports to where you teach gross motor and you work your way down. With rowing, it's almost the opposite way, to where you have to teach the fine tuning skills and then work up to being able to
The
power into those. And so that does make the learning just a little bit weird, because we're talking about like, okay, you're lowering your hands 3 inches, we need you to lower them 1.5 inches.
Mhm.
Understand that difference is just going to make a huge difference.
I mean, you see that in CrossFit with the ergs of where people are pulling the handles too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about the rowing stroke is a lot like, this is what actually got me into Olympic lifting for a little while, is a lot like learning to teach somebody how to do a clean, or teaching them how to do kind of a snap or like a clean pull more than anything else. Less of the actual catch portion of it, obviously, but it's a very complicated, it's a very basic movement at the end of the day. It's pull, catch it, accelerate it up, but there's so many little things that you could do to go wrong that you'll never have a perfect clean. You'll never have a perfect stroke in the same way, to where like you always could have done this one thing just a little different. You're always in pursuit of that, and especially because you've done actually. Have you competed with Olympic lifting? I think you did, right? Yeah. I was sure if you had or not, but like, yeah, especially when you get up there and weight, like just a little bit of timing off, just they pulled here more than here, whatever, it's gone, right? And so it's very similar kind of, and that kind of mindset with it, but I forget how I got there.
Okay. How are you teaching that power and strength to the older athletes?
The older athletes, the more developed athletes, I guess. The way we're doing that, and I'm glad to see rowing finally get this way, is finally I'm taking the approach very much so as learning to be strong off the water and off the ergs, and being able to apply that to the water. Strength training is a very new concept in rowing. Oddly enough, they used to do crazy things where it was like, oh, you're going to sit here and you're going to put 135 on the bar, and you're going to give me 200 reps of deadlift. And even like with some crazy standard, that's insane, and you're not actually learning anything. So that was like where they thought strength training was. But we're finally getting to the aspect of like, hey, it's all about perceived exertion. It's a lot about like, if you can deadlift, I would rather have a bigger, faster, stronger athlete than someone who it can deadlift 450. Then if they're trying to put on the same pressure as someone who isn't nearly as strong, their perceived exertion is considerably less, right? So with strength comes endurance, is kind of the mindset we're at. So we're trying to make them stronger, and that's with using the rowing machines, that's with using like being on the bikes for extra cardio just to get them off and stuff. And then the funny one to me was always, and this might because Northern European countries did rowing a lot, was cross-country skiing is a huge training mechanism for rowers. I think it's more of a cultural, historic thing than it is a super effective thing. But it's just, I know University of Washington just had a big trip with their girls recently, where they all went cross-country skiing for the entire weekend. Like it's a thing for some reason. But with ours, we teach them on the ergs. Today we're actually working on a lot of mobility. We're doing overhead squats and stuff this morning with them, and a lot of just making sure that they're able to get to the right positions before they're able to actually apply the power. But we have them doing the big three. There's squatting, benching, deadlifting. Eventually we're going to get some of the more advanced ones up to doing clean pulls, up to doing, a lot of that more dynamic kind of explosive work. But the more traditional strength training that never existed in rowing, is it was all just sit your butt down on an erg and row. It's now getting part of it. I think part of that's also injury prevention as well, because we saw people just blowing out their backs and overexertion and everything else. Just like with cyclists or swimmers is one that really comes to mind. I've just all the time over and over again. And so being able to really focus on strengthening the stabilization muscles, as well as raising their actual power through very classic traditional lifts, is the best way to start. And it's kind of an interesting concept because I want them to be able to, pull 450 off the ground, obviously, or something like that. But the thing is like, that's the average stroke pressure on a stroke is only 135 pounds on your hands. And so 120 is around 135. So like, I think it averages like 128 or something weird. So we don't need them to be this like super max power lifter kind of thing. It is much more closer to a CrossFit kind of activity, to where it's explosive, but it's also cardio, and it's also, the strength aspect in it too.
Even the duration, it's very much a high intensity sport.
Yeah.
What's the longest actual race distance?
5,000 meters. So you're 20 minutes ish,
and then
give or take.
Falls right in line with 95% of any CrossFit program.
Yeah.
It's going to be 3 to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's all going to be right in there.
Yeah, exactly. It's high intensity training, and that's where my personally, Katie and I, my other coach and I, are really pulling away from, because she came from a very, very traditional program in Pittsburgh, and then she rode for Marietta, and it was all about meters and just sitting down and going for it. Where our kids would never sit down for more than 30 minutes on there at any one time. They might do it once, and that'll be more of a mental exercise than it will physical. Like, you can do this.
It is too. It's annoying. Your butt hurts.
Your butt hurts, and it's more about like establishing that rhythm of, you're going to hit this. But but those windows, the 2K races that we were racing here in the spring, 6 to 8 minutes. Hopefully no slower than that. But like 2-minute average on 500 is an 8-minute race. So that's where we shoot for, ideally. Obviously, faster the better. And then masters rowing is even slower, or even quicker as far as time wise. It's 1,000 meter races, so you're looking at 3-4 minutes most.
Sprint.
It just go.
That's not really holding much back.
Let's lay it all out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's not quite 500 meter style sprint where it's just wail until you're done.
Yeah.
But
I
don't
rode
leaving much in the tank. I hate 1Ks. They're so painful.
They suck. Yeah. Our kids are doing those this morning, actually. We had like a tweet. We had them shifting up every 250 because we're teaching them how to negative split. So we're getting faster. We attack as we go instead of fly and hold on as
shout.
And so it's a mentality of like, it's short enough. It's short enough to go as hard as you possibly can, but it's long enough to suck because you went as hard as you possibly can. It's some of the reason why, like in track, you use your track and field at all when you're in high school.
I did the field events.
Field events. Discus thrower.
I was more shot put. I mean.
Okay. I can see discus though. But yeah, so I liken it to like the mile, to where like it's everybody's done a timed mile, right? But it's like the perfect distance to make you want to kill yourself a little bit. But like, you can't go out and just like push it all out there. You have to be a little bit tactful about this.
You have to go real hard at the beginning, real hard at the middle, and real hard at the end. But if you go a little too much at the beginning, then you walk across that line.
Then you're crawling.
So it's budgeting just that little bit to save for the duration.
And just like a CrossFit workout as well, of like, if you take, we're doing 3 rounds of this,
and you spend it all on round 1, then you're gonna crawl the next 2.
Be humble. Don't put that extra plate on.
Exactly.
Maybe you don't need to plate as high as a box. Like,
so when you're coaching the Case Western kids, what's the ratio of having them on an erg and doing in the weight room as compared to actually going out on the water?
So right now, this is very much so a northern rowing kind of idea too. Of if we have the opportunity to be on the water, we will, because it is so sparse. Ironically, we row during the worst times of the year to possibly row, fall and spring in Ohio. Fall ends cold, spring starts cold. We don't actually compete over the summer. That's when the masters rowers compete because they're smart. And
we've been in this long enough.
We're not doing this anymore. It's just when it lines up. But like, it's northern sports. I mean, same thing you say about track, cross country and track, right? It's ends cold, starts cold. And but so we right now are exclusively on land because it's 30 degrees out and the river should be freezing here in the next couple of weeks, right? But once it becomes time to be on the water, we will not touch the ergs. Maybe once a week. If it's like, hey, we want to do a 2K test, because we base a lot off of that, but it's not everything. Whatever your 2K time trial, your PR is, whatever, that's all well and good. That's one of like 3 factors that will weigh into if you make a boat or not. But that's where it kind of comes into, like, we will pull them off the ergs, but keep them lifting, and we will keep them doing that kind of land stuff. But we got
so you'll do water training, but then also strength training to go with.
Strength training will never go away, just because you can, we all learned again over the pandemic, strength goes away real quick. And it's, if we can keep them constantly being under, getting them under a bar, keeping them pulling something big, picking something up, that's going to help with longevity. That's going to help with just keeping that power development, and also just like injury prevention in general. But again, if I have the option of making them go back and forth on a seat, I'd rather put them in a boat and have to do that than sitting on it. I mean, the springtime gets crazy. We start back on the water. We're going to be going out to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, March 13th, something like that, 7th to the 13th, somewhere around there, for the spring break trip. We will come back, and maybe it'll be warm enough to be on the water here. Maybe it won't. We'll find out. But the season ends May 15th, Dadville in Philadelphia. So April is our entire season, essentially.
That's a real short.
It's quick. It goes real quick.
Okay, so all the base training and all that prep work and even figuring out teams is gonna happen this winter.
A lot of it, yeah. And that's where they cut their teeth on it. Of like, we've been talking a lot about our schedule too, because it's an ordeal to go to a race. You have to take apart the boats, take all the riggers off where the metal things to stick on the side. You have to take all the riggers off. You have to load up the trailer. You have to rent an F-250 from Enterprise, get it all the way 3 hours away to the next regatta, and then you come back and you have to do the same thing. So you just burnt 2 whole practice days just packing up and coming back. And so it's like, we can go to a couple of regattas, go to a regatta like almost every weekend, but we have to also be mindful that they're still students, and they're in a very difficult university, specifically for ours. Or we could go to like maybe 2 or 3 this spring, and really focus on honing in for those 2 or 3. We're even working on getting together with Michigan State and talking to them about like, hey, could we borrow boats when we come up there? Because the logistics of it's just such a nightmare. But if we say, hey, rent some vans, let's go. Because we had Carnegie Mellon come up from Pittsburgh. We did that for them. They drove up. We have enough boats. We put them all out in it. It was chaos, but it worked, and we got it done.
The way collegiate horseback riding works is that whoever's the school that's hosting the horse show has the horses there. And then when the athletes show up, and you draw a horse out of the hat, and that's who you get on. And so you don't have to worry about loading up your horses and getting them to like any other state, because they're just sitting there waiting for you.
And isn't it, I would imagine it's pretty dangerous to travel with horses. Like, it's safe enough, but like not necessarily safe thing you want to do all the time.
It's not something you want to do all the time. It's a little difficult.
I can't imagine. But a similar thing. It makes it a lot easier to get there and do the thing. And that's one of the coolest things about college rowing, is that is fairly common. Where high school rowing is a lot of, you go to these regattas, 30 teams are there. It's an all-day affair, sometimes a 2-day affair, and it's this whole big thing. College is still sticks to the very traditional show up. We could row 5 races against whomever it might be, go down to Cincinnati, race their club team, or Miami, or whatever it might be, and we'll race them. We'll be back by dinner. Like, that's the way it should be, and that's in college, because it's come, go, do it, leave. Because if you ever go to a high school race, it is insanity when it comes to the parents. It looks like, you've been on the Muni lot to tailgate for a Browns game. That, but like bigger. I saw a school one time, parents were like, they have these tents set up, and they had like 3 grills set up all around, and they had like 200 kids on the team, so they're like feeding an army.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's Upper Arlington down in Columbus, and yeah, and so they had everything. There was a dad rolling sushi rolls for these kids. I was like, what? I think it's like a competition.
I think, yeah, high school rower.
Yeah, that's the true race of the day. Is who has the best tent. It's wild. And so with colleges, obviously don't have that. The parents aren't coming to do it. It's just the kids throw up a tent, hopefully stay warm. Let's get it in and out. Let's go home.
Yeah.
That's sort of deal. But yeah, it's so that's kind of a crazy thing about it too. Is like, you know, I grew up in sports to where I was racing every Saturday. You know, with cross country and track and stuff, and football. You're playing football every Friday. Soccer games, probably do one or two a week sometimes. We're rowing. You might in your entire year you could maybe race 6 times the entire time, and that's between fall and spring.
Wow.
You know, sometimes you'll go to races that are big enough to where they'll have prelims, semifinals, finals, and if you're good enough, you race 3 times that day.
Yeah.
But you might go to 3 races, so it's a lot of time and training. Because there is so much to do, but also because putting on a regatta as well is a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's not like with cross country track where it's like, okay, sign up for the slots you want to do. Here we go. So yeah, it's an ordeal, but it's fun. It's an adventure every time we go. You know, one of the cool things about it, just like with any other racing sport that's out in the open, the conditions could be anything, but it's not just rain or sleet or snow that you're dealing with. It's crosswinds on the water. Which way is the river flowing today? Is it flowing fast or is it flowing slow? Like that's going to affect everything. Even on which lane you get. If it's a shallower lane, your boat's going to be slower because you're more in contact with the like deeper waters faster because you're farther away from the depth, and it gives you a faster run. And like there's all these really weird nuances that go along with it. Yeah, so that's kind of what the racing general thing kind of looks like.
Okay.
It's fun.
So relating this kind of back into the CrossFit gyms or just gyms in general.
Yeah.
If your average gym goer wanted to get better at rowing, what are some of the things that you would tell them?
The best thing I think you could do is just be patient with yourself and not try to just muscle it. You know, it's right. It's not all about strength at the end of the day.
Either of those things.
Yeah, it's all about strength at the end. It's not all about strength at the end of the day. It's first off, I know CrossFit a lot of times goes with calories. No one in the rowing world does that. And it's very strange to all of us that the CrossFitters do that. And wattage is a new concept that's getting its way into the rowing world. I think it's very effective. But the biggest rule that people can, if you're trying to develop your skill and trying to become a more efficient rower, which at the end of the day, this is what it's all about, is like you can sit there at 34 stroke rating and bounce back and forth, and somebody who's throwing half the rating can go twice as fast as you are, is really think about what I call sequencing it out. So where it's that fundamentals, you get to the finish, your arms go out, the body comes over, as soon as your hands pass your knees, that's when the legs come up. And it's because at the end of the day, it's a hip hinge. And so it is a deadlift, it is a clean pull, or what it might be. And so it's find that ratio of just, you know, arms, body, legs, big explosive drive. And the cue that I like to use is jump, because a lot of times it's arms, body, legs, body, arms. What you end up having people is like they shoot their legs out, the handle's still sitting there, and then they crank with their back, and then they muscle their arms in, where it really should just be like clean pull, go, jump, pull, and just keeping the momentum going. So it's ideally you have a ratio that's actually 1 to 3. So it's drive, 2, 3, drive, 2, 3. Like you're getting up to that catch. So it should be that. That's what kind of a weird dynamic of it, of like opposed to a cycling or running or swimming, there is dead time between each and every stroke. And on the water, that's really applicable because that is when your boat moves. It's the fastest moment when the oar releases from the water, but you should be covering entire boat length every single time. So a good ratio for that is if you're looking on the erg and you see the meters counting up, you should be going for at least 10 meters or so every single time, every single stroke. So it should be, you know, you're landing on, taking a stroke on the 3, on the 3. On the 3, so it's a really good way to teach ratio.
But that's very dependent on power and
Yeah.
size.
It's an amp power.
If I put you two on rowers side by side, one stroke for you is going to yield 5.5 per meter.
Maybe, probably not. I mean, you'd be really surprised on like, it doesn't make that much of a difference. And it's when you're getting into actual, like if you're trying to lower your 2K, you're trying to lower your 500-meter sprint time during a workout, during CrossFit class, you know, or during CrossFit workout. Again, I can demonstrate before I've done it of like, I could row at twice this rating at a super high rating and be going slower than not, to where if you can't get that 10 meters, if you can't get that distance, you're not going to do yourself any favor by cranking up your stroke rating to try to get it down, because you're just going to, one, blow yourself up because there's higher reps, to where you're better off focusing on, you know, engaging those legs, getting the good strong push off of it, and then just being efficient. I like to talk about the first top quarter of the stroke is from the catch, which is when we're up by the fan, to your toes is nothing but just an initial leg drive. So think about it like you're deadlifting, you're locking that bar into place, right? You're taking out the slack. And then from there, you're standing up with it. You're basically standing up while you're sitting down. And so it's that push, initial catch, and then it's an acceleration from there. And so, you know, yeah, Cara and I are, how tall are you?
5'5" on a good day.
Yeah, so 5'5", I'm a foot taller than you. But like, yes, our power differences might be a little bit different, but like per stroke, could easily, you know, pretty much so get there. Yeah, you might have to go a little bit higher on the stroke rating, just like we're talking 2 beats or so. So instead of a 30, it's a 32, instead of a 20, it's a 22, or whatever it might be. And so it's not this dramatic difference that you need to look bouncing back and forth on to really get. And so it's efficiency at the end
So
of the day.
the shorter you are, the higher your stroke rate might be, is what you're saying?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, the other side of it too is like how you're applying that force. One of the things that is the best tool on the earth that never goes used is that little graph that does a little line. Yeah, and very few people actually use that, and you should, because that's actually showing the amount of pressure you're putting over top of the distance of the stroke.
Okay. So you can see if you're doing a whole bunch of yank at the end, it has a spike on the tail, rather than a nice smooth rip up and then a trickle down. Yeah, well, ideally, the way I teach, and this is more of a University of Washington thing that I picked up from a guy who used to row there, that Coach St. Ed's with. You want to like a perfect parabola. Okay. So the idea is, you know, how much space can you create underneath that line? Because that's the power, right? If you just go like, you all remember back to basic like geometry and whatever else, I guess it would be calculus? I don't know. But like, I think it's more calculus, but the amount of space underneath there is the volume that's in there. So if you really spike up at the front and it's like this hard initial leg drive, then there's no acceleration to it, and it's that like sharp up peak and then strong taper off, you're really not getting that much. You're putting a lot of force on your body at the very, very initial catch, but you're not carrying that pressure through. So we're a longer, smoother stroke to where you're taking that graph and like you're sitting there and it's going from the base, nice even curve up, nice even curve down. It's going the entire length of that screen. That's the ideal stroke. Because it's smooth, it's an even application. You know, that means that you're using your entire body the entire time to press all the way through, not just hitting it and getting to the finish. So that is a really powerful screen to use and to just kind of work on how does this feel? Okay, if I push here, where do I think that I'm kind of coming from? And, you know, working with somebody who watching you actually do it and has an idea of what the right stroke should look like is really big too. If you get behind a beer, that's awesome. But even for some of us more developed, for some of the more developed athletes and stuff, if you're doing a new skill, you might not totally know what you look like. And it might feel right, but it's not necessarily. Well, luckily, rowing, at least on an erg, is pretty easy to film. Yeah, very easy to film. Shoot a lot of film and go, oh yeah, I do look like it. Yeah, and you'll feel it really quickly too. So I mean, biggest tips: sequence it out. Really think about the arms, body, legs, and the biggest cue I have for keeping a good posture and a good body position is keeping those feet down. So many people want to come way up on their toes because they think they're going to get this big, strong push off. But anybody who's ever picked up something heavy,
if you were to squat on your toes, what happens? You hurt your knees and you fall forward, right? You can't nearly put as much force down if you're coming off your toes as you can if you're strong, flat-footed.
Yeah.
And so, and from a more kinesiology kind of aspect of it, as soon as you lift your heels start lifting up, what do you think would happen to your body as you're coming up this way? So if somebody's squatting, and you see their heels lift up, what do you expect for their spine alignment to do?
Depends on what they're squatting a little bit.
Let's say back squatting, yeah, just like
Most likely they're going to start to round.
they're going to start to round.
They're going to start to round as they overload their quads.
Exactly.
Pressure out of their hip.
Exactly. And so same thing. And the hips or glutes and stuff are the strongest part of your body, usually. And so as soon as those heels kick up, your hips start coming up underneath you on the earth, or when you're rowing in general. And so all of a sudden you're in this compromised position. And so they take that to a deadlift. If somebody was going to be going to a deadlift and they're shifting their weight forward, that first motion is going to be their body is going to try to stand up from the shoulders. Same thing with rowing, to where you're getting up there. If your heels are planted, your butt is naturally going to be back just a little bit. It's going to be shoulders, hips, over to your knees, and then kind of that V shape, opposed to being more of an L shape.
Yep.
And so you're going to be naturally leading from the hips than you are from leading from the back. So if you ever see any of your people rowing and they're shooting their shoulders back or whatever, force them to keep their feet down, they physically will not be able to get their hips underneath them if their heels are down.
Yep.
Most of the time, unless there's some weird
Crazy ankles.
something going, crazy ankle mobility.
We got weird ankles.
Yeah, like
So how much like spinal flexion should there be in a stroke?
none.
None. Okay, so even when you're all the way, like knees bent, you're still sitting up.
You're
right?
still sitting up, yeah. I know it gets annoying I'll look at my athletes and I'll go like this. I'll sit up. Look, big chest is the cue that I like to use. So you're coming up, and the demonstration I like to do is if you're sitting at the catch and you were to reach yourself forward as much as possible, and you arch your back and go back over, your shoulders are up in your ears. If you're to take that, somebody has to hold onto your handle, and you're to sink your shoulders back and just extend a little bit from your hips, you can keep it at the same point. If anything, you might lose a half an inch. The thing is, you're going to pick up so much more power and range at the end if you're more of a lever that's hinging over.
As well as you'll be able to breathe.
As well as you'll be able to breathe.
I love putting people
So
in this
big.
position and
Yeah.
have them go like this. Say, okay, take a breath.
Yeah,
Doesn't work so well.
does not work at all. Yeah, and so yeah, it should be none. Again, it's just like deadlifting. So as soon as that back arches, you're putting, I don't know, what would you say, like middle of the thoracic is where all that pressure is going to go, kind of right there in the middle of your spine, sort of whatever range that would be. All that pressure goes to one spot, and so the biggest cue for that is big chests and put your shoulder blades in your back pocket is what I like to say. Of just getting up there, reach from the hips, sit up tall, and that way you can actually carry the weight through it. Opposed to, again, like if you're at a deadlift and you were to hold on to the bar and you're just shoot your legs up and then you try to basically round back RDL, something like that. I don't know. That'd be a similar thing. So very stiff, very structured, less stiff, I guess is a better way to put it.
So it makes a lot of sense that understanding the fundamentals of Olympic lifting would be very beneficial, because the way you structure and set up for a clean, it has to have some rigidity to the spine. There has to be a lot of core engagement, the proper amount of pressure in the right places on the foot. Now clean's a little bit more ball of the foot driven. Doesn't quite have as much of that heel constant pressure.
Sure, for sure. It's more of a jumping kind of all your feet kind of motion.
Yeah, but it's, man, if you take it and you just flip it down on its side, then it looks so stupid similar to how you're actually producing that force into those blocks on the rower. Yeah,
it's a really similar. Even the rowers don't shoot back up to catch the weight like you would in the cleans where you're dropping down to get it. But
that's following through.
You're just following through. So that's why I liken it more to a clean pool.
Okay.
That
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, just because if people think clean, they think catch it.
Yeah.
And so that clean pool is just that up and let it rip is kind of it. but that can go too far as well. So where if you're not keeping engaged with the foot, you know, imagine trying to do a clean pull basically, but keeping your feet planted. Like that's where it's more similar to. So if you were, a good way to train that on the rower is to just take your feet and unstrap them and do feet out rowing. We'll do that on the water, we'll do that on the air, just everything else. But it makes you, because if you don't, you look real stupid and silly because you're going to take a stroke and you're back off the back. So it's engaging that core, but very similar to how you would at the bottom of a catch of a clean, though, to where you're having to catch it and catch it, keep that core engaged and be underneath that way, because if you're not.
Because at the end of the stroke, you have to have engagement so you don't just flop off.
Yeah, you don't flop off, or you do what's called catching a crab, which is when you don't get the oar out of the water and then it gets sucked up underneath the boat. And then you could get smacked in the face. Best one I ever saw was in college. This guy, he was a coxswain. We threw him into the boat for the day because somebody didn't come to practice. And the boat was going pretty good. The other three guys were good rowers. They were moving. And this is a 4-man boat. He caught a crab, and God bless him, he tried to jump on top of it to like keep it out. And his feet were a little small for the shoes. And all of a sudden it just went flying back and out of the boat just completely.
It was a good effort.
Yeah, it was a good try, but there's literally nothing he could have done. This was going to happen. The best thing he could have done was just to let it go.
Yeah.
And then like try to dig it out. But yeah, he tried to jump on it and just whoo, right out of it. I had to control myself from laughing too much. I felt bad for him, but he was fine.
I can imagine what you're saying, but I'm gonna have to go watch some videos.
Ejector
I want to
crab.
see ejector crab.
Ejector crab.
Okay. I want to watch this.
It's
It sounds
hilarious. It's really funny.
Kick them out.
Yeah, and they're gone. Especially if like, you know, you think about it, like there's an 8-man boat. Let's say every rower is on average 200 pounds.
You're fighting a lot of force.
That's a lot of force.
If your oar's in the wrong spot, going the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's eating a lot of energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
Especially if you're like sprinting, let alone anything else.
Yeah.
So if you do find yourself in a boat, if you do actually try this for real life on the water, just let it go. Just lay down. Don't try to be a superhero.
Yeah.
Unless you're very experienced and you know what you're doing and you can think very quickly of how to get it out, just don't. You're going to save yourself a lot of time and energy.
So speaking of getting into it,
yeah,
you have an event that you're running in the very near future.
Yeah, so that's actually, we just shifted the date from to the 26th. So the Hammer Ergata. So this is very much so closer to like what you would do at a gym. So it's on the rowing machines. It's going to be down in the Cleveland Rowing Foundation, which is on British Street down on the peninsula and down the flats. And it's going to be anyone from high school to up ages. We'll have age bracket categories. It's a 1,000 meter erg race for masters. So that's after college age. But we will have an open division that's going to be rowing 2,000 meters. And so that'll be your high school and college and anybody who's feeling a little overzealous and might want to do it. But highly encourage the open race for if somebody wants to challenge themselves. But it's free entry. We're accepting donations, of course. We'll be down there. It's going to be up on a screen. We'll actually plug the ergs in all into, so they're all connected to each other and then connected to a program. So where there's going to be a projector on the screen that actually show like, you ever gone to the fair and you do a little squirt gun thing and the horses run along the track?
Yeah.
Basically that.
Yeah. You can set up like a pace boat on a rower.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you
imagine
can tell it that you need to hit a 2-minute 500.
Yeah.
And that boat goes 2 minutes per 500.
Yeah.
You're either with it or behind it or in front of it.
Exactly.
And that little graphic. So this is a blown up version of that.
Sort of, but you're actually each person. So you'll see like lane 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the ergs.
So it's populated by the other ergs.
By the other ergs.
At a set time.
Exactly. Cool. And so so you'll actually be able to see like the people watching. We'll be able to see who's winning, who's where, like how far ahead they are and stuff. And so it's fun. But yeah, it's called the Hammer Regatta. We haven't done it in a couple years because COVID and all that stuff, but we're bringing it back. It's open to anybody. If you're a rower or a CrossFitter or you're just somebody who thinks that this could be fun, it's totally free. Come down. We'll be putting out the sign up ideally later today. It'll be on Cleveland Rowing Foundations and Case Western Reserves Rowing's Instagrams. You know, just go. It'll be basic sign up information, nothing crazy. And we'll be starting at 8 a.m. Yeah, 8 a.m. will be the first race. I don't know exactly offhand the order of events, but they'll be going till about one or two, depending on how many people we have signed up and how fast we work through them.
Myself and Eric with Fit for Function will be there too at the table.
Yeah, there you go.
And then, well, me, Phil, Eric, and another will also be on a team on the crazy chaotic sprint event.
Yeah, the sledge. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the sledgehammer.
The sledgehammer.
Yeah, so the winner of that will actually get a trophy sledgehammer. That will be.
Oh, we gotta win now.
Will be Woodburn's and
Kicking you off. I know Eric could probably pull a big stroke.
It's got to be co-ed teams too, so 2 guys, 2 girls. So you gotta have balance.
Okay.
We have 2 girls.
We don't.
We'll just rename Aaron.
Should Aaron just got kicked off the team?
But it's just Aaron.
Eric. Oh. Yeah, so it's 2,000 meter distance. It's a lot of fun. Everyone just rows 500 meters. So yeah, it's go and put everything on the line. The switches are the funniest thing because like there's people like pulling down the feet and they're like, or they put them in or they don't put them in or whatever.
So can I put my feet in and then Phil strap my feet in?
Yep. It's teamwork. The whole thing is teamwork. We've seen before like someone sits behind the fan kind of thing and then somebody jumps on and they just hold onto their feet. Do whatever you think. Yeah, like it's as crazy as you think.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's good.
And
That's
so
good.
the best way I've ever found was that you have someone kind of holding it there, and they get on, and so the last person gets off. They push on the sides of the straps, pull them out as fast as you can, and then the next person jumps on and tries to slide their feet under. And while somebody else is trying to get your feet in and pull the straps tight, you're just like arms and backing, just like keeping it moving.
Okay.
And it should take like NASCAR pit stop style, like all of a second and a half for somebody to go and pull your feet in.
Yeah.
You got to practice. I recommend
practice.
practicing. Otherwise, somebody might get hurt.
So
We'll laugh at you.
having competed in a decent bit of CrossFit stuff, but almost always as an individual, a little bit of team here and there, there's very specific strategy to getting in and out of rowers workouts.
Okay.
Because if you set them up poorly, then you can spend 5-10 seconds and lose a big score.
Right.
Just because you took time getting in or out.
Yeah.
So there have been some workouts where you'll actually find the most benefit if you just fix the straps a little loose.
Yeah.
So you can get in, but also have that back.
The initial catch. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've had a workout where I put a piece of tape on the slide to hold my seat at a point.
Oh,
so it wouldn't override
it once you get on it.
Well, actually, I just always stayed behind it.
Oh, okay.
That was my fix.
Gotcha.
That was my heel
spot.
on.
Yeah,
that was my catch.
Yeah.
So I would be able to sit on it in exactly the right place and begin applying pressure instantly.
Yeah.
And it worked really well. It was the CrossFit Open, which is that kind of first phase of competition for the CrossFit Games season.
Gotcha.
And I did the workout and got a decent score, and then thought about it and said, okay, well, if I can transition a second faster each time over the course of 20 minutes with 12 transitions, there's a handful of reps.
Yeah.
And if I can start applying force more quickly because a different seat alignment, then I can get another couple. And sure enough, I got like 30 more reps in my second go at it, being 0% fitter. Yeah. Just by having more aggressive in and out strategy.
Being a little smarter. That's a very triathlete kind of mindset.
Yes, triathletes.
All right, I'm gonna have my shoes laced open this, or I'm gonna wear the bungee shoes, or whatever. It's gotta be set perfectly.
Now we both race cyclocross, which is
wild.
Off the bike, on the bike. You run through the mud, you carry it through sand, you go up the snowy hills. Yeah. It's crazy. But a big part of that discipline is hopping on bikes. Yeah. I wring my hands like crazy when I watch triathletes mount their bikes. Oh yeah. Because nobody knows how to jump onto a bike and start riding. Yeah. Which this is all we see every time we race is people doing this. Yeah. And I watch these triathletes like put one foot in, swing a leg over, and okay, now all right. Yeah. They do everything else super fast. They change their shoes so fast, and then watching them get on those bikes, I'm just like, just learn how to keep it moving.
Yeah. You're timing their bathroom times.
I did a few triathlons when I was in high school and college, and there were some people that get really weirdly good at it, but at the end of the day, it was like, they're like, oh, quick, and into it, and they're like pedaling on their shoes and like trying to get the one as it's going. Yeah. And yeah, no, it's like, yeah, everything else is super snappy. But yeah, if they took a page from, you know, cyclocross and it was like, all right, how do you guys do this? Which like, do you run? Do you have to take your feet out of the shoes or do you just unclip and run?
So yeah, you've got clipless pedals, which ironically you clip in, so whatever the hell that means.
Yeah.
But, so you're stuck on your pedals and
Yeah.
you just kick out sideways.
Yeah, like you want
and
to
then
know,
you're free. So when I'm coming off the bike to run over something, I'll kick out my right leg, swing it off the bike while I'm still rolling forward at a pretty good pace.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll pop my left foot out and start running beside my bike, and then I'll pick it up over the thing or throw it on my shoulder and keep running. On the other side of it, I'm going to set my bike down while I still run and then kind of leave it a little bit in front of me, kind of push it forward ahead. And then I'll hop my hips up and onto it and find the left pedal and then the right pedal and clip in as I start pedaling. So it's very much in motion.
It's some gymnastics level.
It's a little bit that
pommel horse
as a guy. The first couple times I did it, I was a little nervous about the landing.
Yeah, I was about to ask, has that ever not gone as planned? And back tire.
Not oh no, not in that. I haven't ended up on the back tire. I've missed my pedal when I went to re-engage it, and I've put my foot through my wheel and actually just destroyed spokes and tore apart a wheel.
I imagine it took a doozy on your leg too.
No, it was just my it was this much of my foot.
I imagine you like Looney Tunes with your leg through.
No, just the toes, but it shredded the spokes. Now it's going clink, 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 and I stop and I go, oh crap.
He's tried to get me to do a running start onto the back of a tandem bicycle before. Yeah. And
well, she doesn't have to do it. I'm riding the bike. It's already rolling. All she has to do is
I think that's worse though, because the bike is like under pressure. At least if you're the one pushing
it's already safe.
You're like going the same way. I don't think the stability is the aspect. I feel like I'm with her on this one.
Thank you.
So I feel like the idea is more of the like matching speed, less than I'm going to fall. Because I feel like once you're on it, you're on it. Like that wouldn't be my worry. If I was trying to like running start, jump onto it, I think it would be more of the matching speed. But like all of a sudden, if you took an extra pedal a little bit harder, and you're like, oh shit.
Well, I don't do that. In fact, for her to jump on,
I'm sure you don't. You're an expert.
For her, I wouldn't go that far. For her to jump on, I stop pedaling.
Okay.
So that the pedals aren't moving when she goes to engage with it.
He usually likes to do it about 60 miles into a race, and then he'll start riding away from me and go, okay, jump on now.
That's true. I
so just don't make him too mad beforehand. I go, okay, jump on, go. And then you're walking
like,
over
no, I don't want to run right now.
Yeah, that's crazy. Cyclocross is wild. I don't even understand.
Well, but that sledgehammer is going to be pretty wild too.
It'll be fun.
It's going to be chaotic.
I know there's a kid from Shoemaker who he's pulling crazy times right now. He's like a 6:18 2K. He just committed to Penn.
That's very fast.
It's real fast. He's creeping up on the boathouse record at 6:15 with his former Ignatius kid who Cal. I think he went to Cal. I think that's where he ended up. But that's a 1:37, I think, something like that. Okay. Ballpark.
Yeah.
I have to look at that, but it's fast. It's real fast. And so he has a couple people he's put together. So you guys will have your money, cut out.
Strong girl.
But just make Monsky do it.
Okay.
I mean, she's a little hurt right now, I know, but like,
just take this in your place. Don't get a great team.
She'll be fine.
She's got one leg. Yeah, that's all you got.
It's good.
I'm gonna text her right now. Hey.
Guess what you're doing?
It's been a long time since I've pulled a 1 or a 2K, but I've done a 2K in like a 6:28, I think.
That's good.
I mean, I'm not a tall guy.
No,
but for me, it was when
Heights not everything for it. Power and application.
Power and application, and that's what I really learned. I was lucky enough to do a rowing course with Aaron Cafaro, who is an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah, I know the name.
Also, like 3 inches shorter than the field.
Yeah.
So small.
It's not about height.
She's still like 5'11".
Yeah.
Not a tiny lady, but
right.
Shorter than most of the people she's competing with.
Right.
Went back and reworked her game after 1 year's Olympics.
Yeah.
Did a lot of power cleans, did a lot of weightlifting, learned how to be better set, pushing things off the ground.
Yeah.
Transferred that onto a rower, goes back and takes gold.
Yeah. Well, I think an excellent example of, do you know the name Ryan Hall?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Great American Marathoner.
Mhm.
He did a similar thing, realized this losing weight is not working.
Yeah.
I'd rather be strong.
Yeah.
And then he won and was faster when he was stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Sometimes the simplest answer could be the right one, but sometimes it's more of, well, what are all the factors? Because it's not a simple sport. It's a very complicated endeavor that has so many inputs.
Yeah.
That you really got to start tweaking a lot of different dials and seeing what you actually get out of them.
Right, and there is a division called lightweight rowing as well. It's slowly going by the wayside, as there's a lot of weighted stuff, especially at the high school level, just because of the obvious reasons, especially but these people cut weight. My general philosophy is, if you can't naturally make lightweight, don't try. You're better off putting on that extra 10 pounds and getting that
being strong
power.
and healthy.
Yeah, be strong and healthy, and it's gonna take you a lot farther. Because you're not gonna be constantly putting your body under stress. Like I said, granted, if you just naturally sit there, good for you. Kudos. But don't force yourself to do it. But again, like you're saying though, 5'11" as a general rule, that's a tall person, no matter who you're really at. But even then, I had a kid that coached at St. Ed's. He was a stroke seat, so the front seat, one close to the coxswain, amazing rower. He was 5'6" on a good day. He was 4 inches shorter than the guy sitting behind him, 4 or 5 inches shorter than the guy sitting behind him. But he was an amazing rower, and it was all about application. I was, kid had a hard nose, and it was one of those you're gonna have to go through me kind of attitudes, and so that's what we put him there. He wasn't the tallest guy in the boat, but he had one of the best strokes, and he was going to die before he gave up. And that's what we needed, because everyone else is following that lead. And so it's, how bad do you want it? And just like any other, that's one of the beautiful things of it, opposed to with some just strength training. You're at a certain point, you are only going to, right now you are this strong. You can continue to get stronger, but with racing sports, and it's what I fell in love with racing sports, if it's, cycling or triathlons or running or rowing or whatever, it's, how much pain are you willing to put yourself through for this?
There's an unmeasurable element of it.
Yeah, is that X factor?
Which is just, how willing are you to suffer?
Yeah. My cross country coach used to put it well. He said, if you go and play football, if you go and play, some other contact sport, rugby, wrestling, whatever it might be, you might get hurt today. You might take a bad hit. You might do whatever, and you might feel pain. But in racing sports, it's a matter, or even in CrossFit games, it's a matter of how much, which is, I guess at the end of the day is a race, right?
Yeah.
It's just not the same traditional to the finish line. It's how much pain are you willing to put yourself through, and how much are you willing to sacrifice? And rowing is a very unique one of that. If it's cross country, it's track, it's CrossFit, it's swimming, even outside of a relay, your effort on that leg, your effort in that race only affects you in those. With rowing, if you let up, you're letting down the other 7, the other 4, the other whatever it is, the other person in your boat. The only exception to that is a single man boat. But you are making everyone else carry that weight that you're not putting. And that's why, as odd as it is, and as lonesome as it is sometimes seeing the one person sitting there erging, when they get put into a boat, it is the biggest team sport out there, because everyone has to look and be functioning the exact same at the exact same time all together. And if any one person lets up just that little bit, you lose the race by half a mile ball, quarter of an inch. And I've had teams lose and win races by that. And it's that, that one kid, everyone comes back, it's oh, I should have just pushed that a little bit harder. It's yeah, you should have. I don't know what to tell you.
It's extreme tandening is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it's probably very similar. Yeah, because you could just take it easy and look like you're doing the thing.
That's what he does on the camera.
Yeah, exactly. And then he leaves you to get left behind.
Well, I'm really excited for your guys.
We're excited to have you guys down there. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
To talk to anybody that wants to. The more people, the better.
We're gonna get some teams coming from this gym.
Yeah, if you know anybody who's wanting to sponsor it, that'd be great too. So we can buy hammers and all that good stuff. Because that's the fun part. So Sledgehammer gets the Sledgehammer, right? And we'll probably spray paint it gold and wood burn onto it, whatever. Hammer got a 2023. And then each one of the other winners for the different events get just a normal carpenter's hammer. That'll also be for wood burn and all that stuff too. So
Cool.
we walk away with some literal hardware.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
Right.
It's great. Well, we're gonna try.
We're gonna try.
So yeah, so if anybody's interested, definitely get in contact with Cleveland Rowing Foundation. We'll find a program for you. If your kids are interested, there's something out there for you. But even if it's down to, we'd love to do stuff more with the fitness community in Cleveland. If it's coming down, spend some time at the bow house, see what this is about, or vice versa. I know that I have a friend of mine who is interested in learning how to do Olympic lifts, so I encouraged them to get involved with CrossFit. I was like, this will help you.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Awesome. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot about rowing.
Yeah. Sorry for the rants. I
You're
get
good.
I get so boxes and
There you go.
Sweet.
I appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I look forward to doing this event.
Yeah. Good to meet you in person finally.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
yeah,
I complain about him enough, so
That's
it's
fine.
nice to be in person.
He doesn't.
Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let us know in the comments below what you liked, what you disliked, what you'd like to hear more of, and any questions we can help answer. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.